Hello, is the Sinister Gambino here with a new video. In this video, I'm going to be making my review and guide on the Dewbauchee JB700, JB700 Commissioned, as I'll be calling the story mode exclusive variant, and the JB700W. So starting off with the price of the original, it's $475,000 in story mode. For the online version of the game, of course, it's $350,000 instead. As for the customizations on the original JB700, it has basically 12 customization options. It's not the most bare bones customizations are in the game. I believe vehicles like the Mariachi Tornado have like 2 customizations. But yeah, the 12 options, or 15 I believe in online, because of explosives, loss theft prevention, and selling, which pretty much can be done on all other vehicles in the game for online as well. Pretty much all the customizations they have is just for performance, and it's like small cosmetic things that can be done on pretty much every other vehicle, like wheels and like windows, of course. And speaking of performance, how does the vehicle do when it comes to lap time and top speed? It's 23rd place between like the 42 Sport Classic vehicles in the game, and that is putting into account all the non-raceable options, Deluxo, Stromberg, Art, and the other one is the JB700W, which will be in this review, of course. So it's 23rd for lap time, which is slightly better than the weaponized version, by the way. And for top speed, only like one non-raceable option is put into account, because only one is like better than the original JB700 and the weaponized one for top speed. But for top speed, it has 11th place out of the 42 different vehicles in the game. By the way, credit for the numbers for lap time and top speed go to Bruffy1322. And now onto the JB700 Commissioned, as I'll refer to it as. It's a weaponized version of the original JB700 with working weapons. Now it's only in like 2 missions for the story mode, so because it's only in the story mode with missions, you cannot buy it and there's no customization, sadly. Starting off with the like big features of the JB700 Commissioned, the first like big feature of it is the like ejector seat on it. And sadly, this is not something that returned for the JB700W. Very unfortunate that it did not return. Though to be fair, I feel it would be very limited in its usage unless they gave the vehicle like a jump boost or a rocket boost or like both. Personally, I would not have minded a jump boost at all. And even without a jump boost, you could like eject out the vehicle and probably dodge like a missile if you were about to get killed or whatever. But here in this clip, of course, I'm showing off the spikes as well. Now, I was very worried that like it was gonna really ruin my opinion on the JB700W by not having the actual spikes. But I'll talk about it later, of course. But the spike mines are actually pretty good, and it's kind of actually better off with the spike mines than the actual spikes in the story mode, for example. As for the weapon, for the machine guns for the story mode variant, they're kind of weak, to be completely honest. They're not anywhere near as good as like any of the machine guns in online, for example. With how unique the machine guns are on it, it's a damn shame, really. But yeah, onto JB700W, it's on Warstock Cash and Carry for $1,470,000. And as for customizations, it's literally pretty much the exact same thing as the original JB700, except you have weapons and secondary weapons. But yeah, basically when it starts out, it's basically the same thing as the JB700, so in a sense it could be considered a paywall, since it's basically just a more expensive JB700 when you first get it, until you get weapons on it. And then onto the performance of the vehicle. For lap time, as I mentioned earlier, it does actually place slightly worse apparently than the original JB700, being 25th place instead of 23rd place. Even though I believe Bruffy1322 mentioned that they're almost like complete carbon copies, they do seem to have a slight difference in lap time. And then for top speed, as I mentioned before, it's 11th place in top speed, just like the regular counterpart. And on that clip, I showed that you can go between like the mounted weapons and drive-by weapons. And I showed the insurance seems to be higher than usual for like a weaponized vehicle. As far as I remember from like a way long time ago, they made it where weaponized vehicles were supposed to be like $10,000 or under for insurance. I think like weaponized vehicles for the most part were capped at $10,000 at max. So that's something pretty interesting, it seems, for this vehicle. And then I tested it against like a turreted limo or whatever for the machine guns, and it only took 3 seconds, I believe. So the machine guns are definitely better like damage wise than The JB700 commissioned, of course. However, I wish it had the like same unique like guns as the single player variant, of course. Just like more powerful than it is in story mode. So it's a shame for sure that they are like completely different machine guns and like the way they sound and like behave and stuff like that. Onto this clip here, I decided to show off the spike mines with the vehicle. I do actually prefer the spike mines over the slick mines. I was honestly kind of surprised, because personally I didn't actually expect the like spike mines to actually do damage. I only expected them to pop tires. So yeah, I knew it was always going to be good for like an NPC, like PvE kind of situation. So I kind of wanted to go with something that impacted players first, so I did try out the silic mines, but against NPCs and for like PvE, I feel it has like no impact at all for the silic mines. So I definitely actually recommend the spike mines, because it does impact NPCs, and even with players it can still damage vehicles, I'm pretty sure, even if it has bulletproof tires. It just obviously won't pop the tires. And then how does the vehicle do in a contact mission? To be honest, I was kind of surprised how good this vehicle was in the contact mission, also VIP work as well. Felt like it was really hard to get shot in this thing, to be completely honest. I don't know if it's because of the like shape of the windows or something. But yeah, I did not take anywhere near as much damage as I thought I was going to take, so this can actually be a kind of decent vehicle for contact missions for sure. But yeah, onto the pros and cons list. I have around like 50 something between all three of the different variants of the vehicles for pros and cons, of course. So starting off with the original JB700, first pro is that it's cheap, and for its price in single player again, it's $475,000, and in online it's actually reduced to $350,000, and it's at least cheap for the standards of today for Grand Theft Auto Online, obviously. With how much more like expensive things are nowadays in the game, it's definitely not a big price at all for sure. And also not to mention it's the regular variant I'm talking about here. Second pro I have for the original JB700 is a slightly better lap time than JB700W. I believe it's only like 0.21 milliseconds, but still it is slightly better, and it actually does have it like 2 placements above, since I believe there's like a vehicle behind the JB700 which is like 0.02 milliseconds behind or something like that, which was like the GT500 or something like that, I think it was. So yeah, it has the slightest bit of like edge in performance for lap time, but yeah, it's really not going to be much, but obviously it's still pro nevertheless. Next pro I have for the original JB700 is that it's raceable, since as I mentioned earlier, you cannot use the JB700W in races. If anything, at most it would be for transform races, but obviously there hasn't been like Rockstar created transform races in a while, so even then it's not really usable in transform races, even for example. Plus I doubt it's even in like the creator yet, for example, as well. Next pro I have for the original JB700 is that it's in story mode, since obviously this one's an online exclusive one. And then the other variant, the commissioned, is only in like a couple of the missions in the game. So that's pretty much the most accessible version between the three. But yeah, as it's very small, of course, it's still something I wanted to bring up anyways. But yeah, last pro I have is it's still okay in sport classic races with straightaways. As I mentioned, of course, earlier with both the original and this also goes for the JB700W, is that they're actually 11th place out of like 42 of the sport classic vehicles in the game. That means they're like 3/4 of the way through like all the 42 vehicles in the game. So it's still almost competitive, to be honest. It's right underneath the top 10, which is still pretty good. But yeah, as for cons for the original JB700, first one I have is as bare bone customizations. This is a thing with all the variants technically, especially the mission exclusive one, the JB700 commissioned, where you can't customize it at all, so it doesn't have customizations even. But yeah, it's a shame really, especially with the weaponized one, kind of going to that one slightly there, because yeah, they made a whole different variant basically just to make you purchase the weapons and stuff like that online. And when you first get it, even though it's almost like 1.5 million, it's basically just the same thing as the original, and it costs like 350,000. So they really should put like the modifications I feel on the existing JB700, but whatever. Next con I have for the original JB700 is it has unusable weaponry. I can't think of much of another like vehicle in the game that has weapons on it, but you just cannot use them, obviously. So yeah, that's a really big con of the original one, of course. Next con I have for the JB700 is it barely has improved lap time over JB700W. As I mentioned, it's only a couple placements above, and even then it's only like 0.21 like milliseconds, something like that. From what I recall seeing on Ruffy 1322. But yeah, last con I have for the original JB700 is it has no improved top speed over JB700W. While it has improved the lap time by the very slightest, the top speed of both variants that are raceable and the slightest, of course, considering that there's the commissioned one that can't be used outside of a couple single player missions again. Yeah, it having no improved like top speed when it does over lap time is kind of weird in my opinion. The fact it even has like increased performance at all is kind of weird, to be honest. But yeah, moving on to the JB700 commissioned. I am kind of only talking about like how it would be if it were in GTA Online as well, kind of, because obviously it's kind of fair to compare the commissioned and the weaponized versions, just because they're in two different modes doesn't mean I'm not going to compare them. But yeah, first pro I have for the JB700 commissioned, the single player only one, of course, is it has usable weaponry, unlike the original JB700. Next pro I have is it's the most unique JB700 variant. A lot of the stuff it has in the story mode, no other vehicles in the story mode has. Obviously, there's vehicles on the line that may have eventually got that stuff. Like, for example, in single player, I think it's the only vehicle that has, like, machine guns, which I think is another pro that I have later on. And yeah, spikes, no other vehicle really has spikes, and it kind of goes for online as well, I think. Like, actual spikes. Not just talking about the spike mines, but, like, actual spikes. And yeah, it's pretty much the only land vehicle, like, between both single player and online that has an ejector seat, I'm pretty sure, as well. Which that goes into the next pro, it has an ejector seat. However, I pretty much already explained that one, so next one is, it's the only land vehicle with an ejector seat. Again, that one was kind of explained slightly earlier, but I'm saying it again to say it's the pro, of course. Yeah, next pro I have is it has spikes. No other vehicle in the game really has like actual spikes. Even in online, no like vehicle has like actual spikes on them. So yeah, the fact that it has like actual spikes is kind of unique, of course. I'll say it could do better with the spike mines, the story mode variant, but spike mines didn't exist till like the Arena War DLC, of course, so that wasn't really possible then, of course. Next pro I have is it's the only vehicle with actual spikes. Kind of already mentioned that one with the pro has spikes, so I'll just go on to the next one. Next pro for the JB700 commissioned is it can spin vehicles out. Obviously, since it has spikes, it can easily pop like vehicles with bulletproof tires. Especially since it's single player, pretty much any vehicle is going to get their tires popped, unlike in online. So yeah, the fact it can spin vehicles out could definitely be quite nice for sure. But yeah, next pro I have for the JB700 commissioned is it's great at hindering moving vehicles. Again, that kind of goes into the can spin vehicles out, though I kind of consider them different things. Because you can hinder a vehicle in a sense, but the tire popping thing might not necessarily come handy in certain circumstances. So that's definitely kind of nice as well. Next pro I have is it has unique machine guns. I believe they were kind of shooting like bursts or something like that for the machine guns for the single player version, which was quite interesting. I wish the online one had the same machine guns as the one in single player with like the burst kind of shots and stuff like that. But yeah, they should just make it more powerful. Like for example, I believe for like a civilian vehicle, it took like 8 seconds in the engine, I believe it was, to destroy a civilian vehicle for the single player one. Yet for online, the machine guns on the one on the gameplay right now, I destroyed a turret in a limo, which is kind of armored, it seems, as well, within like 3 seconds, and that was in the engine even. So yeah, I wish the JB700W had those same machine guns, just buffed compared to the story mode for sure. Because it won't make it overpowered or anything, I'm sure. But yeah, next pro I have is it's the only land vehicle with machine guns in story mode. Pretty sure that's the case. I wasn't entirely sure on that, but I couldn't think of a single vehicle in the story mode that has the machine guns on them as well. I believe online like started including more like vehicles with like machine guns on them. And that was in like 2015, 2016 probably, I would imagine, even. But yeah. Next pro I have, which I believe is the final pro actually, is it's the most weaponized vehicle in story mode. Having like 2 different weapons, of course. Like yeah, there's the buzzard in story mode as well, for example, with like missiles and machine guns. But for a land vehicle, it's more impressive having a couple different weapons, I would say. At least in the story mode, that is. Because obviously it's been ditched like years and years back, obviously. But yeah. For cons, I believe I came up with 6 for the JB700 commission, the like obviously mission exclusive variant, as I've mentioned before. But yeah, first con I have for that one is it's mission exclusive. It's a shame really that you can't like buy it in the story mode. Would have been really cool if they randomly like made it purchasable when the like weaponized JB700 came out in like online. Would have been really cool for them to just randomly make it purchasable. Because that could give the single player the slightest bit more attention, which it kind of deserves, I feel, personally. But yeah, I'm not shocked at all that they never like made it not mission exclusive. But yeah. Next con I have for the JB700 commission is it cannot be bought, obviously as it's mission exclusive, as I mentioned before. And also it cannot be customized. That one's kind of pretty straightforward. It cannot be bought and it's mission exclusive. Next one I have is it's only in story mode. I don't know why they kind of went with like a whole new variant for online. They could have kind of reused the one from story mode in my opinion, just give it buffs of like the machine guns for example. And yeah, it could maybe have the option of like the actual spikes that the one in story mode has in addition to like the spike and silk mines. And who knows, maybe even spike strips. That would have been pretty cool. Like cover like half a like road or whatever with spikes. Not like it would even be overpowered or anything, because like pretty much any player in GTA Online, if they're not like a cheap person or anything, is going to have bulletproof tires on pretty much all their stuff, I would imagine. But yeah, that kind of goes into my next con, is that spikes have short range. Now that might sound weird, because obviously it's kind of supposed to have a short range with like how the spikes looked and stuff like that with the single player variant. But yeah, in parentheses I put no spike strips, because it would be really cool to have spike strips as like an option for like the secondary weapons for the online version at least. That would actually be pretty cool. I would definitely see that having quite some potential over the other like options I've kind of mentioned earlier. But yeah, last con I have for the JB700 commission, the story mode exclusive weaponized one, is that the machine guns are weak. As I've mentioned, it took like 8 seconds to destroy like a civilian vehicle, and I'm pretty sure that was even in the engine. And yeah, it took less time when I was doing like the vehicle weak spot, as I showed with like the bottom left wheel or whatever. That's pretty much a weak spot on almost every single vehicle in the game, so it's not shocking that it took like much less time in that case than when shooting the engine, where it took like 8 whole seconds to destroy a civilian vehicle. But yeah, finally, I'll be going with the pros and cons of the JB700W, and sadly I have almost just as much cons as I do pros, believe it or not. Before I go right back into the pros cons list for the JB700W, how does the vehicle do in VIP work? Again, I was pretty surprised, to be completely honest, that it did as good as it did on a Headhunter. Especially considering that a Headhunter, I believe the like AIs in the Headhunter actually have better accuracy than most of the AIs, if not like all the AIs in like traditional like contact missions. So yeah, I believe they have increased. I definitely believe they have increased accuracy over people that are in like contact missions, I'm pretty sure. So that especially surprised me. Yeah, it's pretty good in Headhunter, and it can also be pretty alright with like hostile takeover and stuff like that. So VIP works like that are probably what you're going to want to prioritize with this vehicle for sure. But yeah, this vehicle is mainly going to be for VIP work and contact missions, I would say, and those are probably going to be the best ways to making money with this particular vehicle. But yeah, for pros, I believe I have 14 pros, and then for cons, I believe I have 13 cons. But yeah, going to the first pro of the JB700W is it has equal top speed to regular counterpart. So unlike the last time where it got slightly shafted, it did not get shafted whatsoever at all in the top speed department. So that's definitely kind of nice for this vehicle for sure. Next pro I have is it's okay in sport classic races with straightaways. As I mentioned before, in top speed, the original and the weaponized versions of the JB700, of course, they're both 11th place, and for a vehicle that, especially for the original, for a vehicle over like 6 years old and stuff like that, that's pretty impressive that it's still 11th place for what I know for sure. But yeah, next pro I have is it can have weaponry applied in LSC. So they did not make it where you have to have like a mobile operations center, like Avenger, the like vehicle workshops and those, or like the arena vehicle workshop, I believe is another option, for example. Didn't make you like go in a like vehicle workshop to like do an upgrade price. Honestly, I kind of would have preferred it that way, but to be fair, having it in LSC is more accessible to like newer players and stuff like that. So that's definitely quite a pro for sure, kind of more so than a con. But I think I do kind of go into that later with the cons list. But yeah, next pro I have for the JB700W is that it has usable weaponry. I believe that's the one I shared with the like JB700 commissioned, of course, because the original one has the weapons on it, of course, they just cannot be used. Next pro I have is it has spike and silic mines. As I mentioned, I do prefer spike mines way more than I do the silic mines. Because I believe spike mines, of course, have a like player and NPC impact. So it can be good for PvE and like very particular PvP situations as well, I would imagine. Compared to like the silic mines where they're mainly going to be for players. Whereas I tested like silic mines like off the like video, of course, and I was pretty disappointed with how like bad they were against NPCs. Like I was doing it on like NPCs on like the highway, I didn't notice them like swerving or anything, and I was like, could somehow get them to like move left or right, like as I'm like using those silic mines, for example. But still, nevertheless, it's kind of nice it has another like mine option in addition to the spike options for those who might not want to use the spike mines. But yeah, next pro I have is the spike mines can be stacked. Technically, this pro is for any like vehicle that has the spike mines in the game. But yeah, the fact you can stack the spike mines for some really good like damage, especially on a civilian vehicle where it takes like 6 spike mines. If you get like 5 off on one vehicle as you can stack them and get one more, that could be very helpful for certain cases in like PvE for sure. Next pro I have is it can spin vehicles out. Another one that's shared with the JB700 commissioned, of course. And I don't know if it really does it like any better than the like original one from like the story mode. I don't know if it's any better in that regard. Like yeah, the spike mines at least do damage on like the actual like spikes in the story mode. In terms of if it pops tires better, I'm not sure in that regard. But yeah, next pro I have is it has better damaging machine guns than story mode counterpart. As I mentioned before, the like story mode variant takes like 8 seconds and like a vehicle's engine to even destroy it. Whereas this vehicle on a turreted limo even, shooting it right in the engine, I believe it only took 3 seconds. So it definitely has better machine guns, like damage wise for sure. Next pro I have for the JB700W is it's usable in free mode, which is only on there, of course, because the one from story mode is only in like 2 of the single player missions in the game, which for those who are curious, it's Deep Inside and Pac-Man, I'm pretty sure, for the 2 story mode missions that have it. But yeah, next pro I have is it's buyable, as obviously the single player variant cannot be bought outside of the missions. Next pro I have is a customizable JB700 weaponry. So basically it's just the exact same thing as the original JB700, except you have the options of weapons and secondary weapons. As much of a cash grab as this vehicle is, in my personal opinion, it's definitely more of a pro in a sense than a con. But more details on that later, of course. Next pro I have is it's the most useful JB700 variant for sure, as it's the weaponized like one from story mode, like for the most part, except it's in online. So that's definitely makes it the most useful one, no doubt. But yeah, next pro I have is it can switch between mounted and drive-by weaponry, similar to a lot of the more recent like vehicles in the game. I decided to put it as a pro for this vehicle. It's kind of a weird pro to have, I feel, because obviously the one from story mode, I believe the L1 button or whatever it is on the system you play it on, I believe that button does the weapons, and I believe that's normally like the drive-by weapon. But yeah, you can disable the machine guns on this one when you're not using them, unlike the one in story mode where you have to use the machine guns, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, next pro I have for this vehicle is it's great at hindering moving vehicles, which is another one I had with the like weaponized version from story mode. But yeah, finally for the 13 cons I have for the vehicle. First con I have is it's expensive for what you get. But yeah, basically to get the vehicle weaponized in online, you have to pay almost 1.5 million, and that's not even including weapons already on it. Like, I would understand if you had to add a secondary weapon on it, but at least have the like guns on it. Well, actually, even then, I don't even think I would understand it, because like the one in story mode already comes with spikes. If anything, it was the like weapon actually having live ammunition that was added on in the story mode, for example. But yeah, next comment I have is it can be considered a paywall, as it's basically a like regular JB700 when you first get it until you get the guns and the spike mines or even the slick mines on it. Yeah, I've kind of went in detail with that one, so I'll go into the next one. Next con I have is it's not an upgrade. Could be similar to the Insurgent Pickup Custom, I put in parentheses. Reason I say similar is I get that the Insurgent Pickup and then the Technical, for putting them to Insurgent Pickup Custom and Technical Custom. I understand those are Pegasus vehicles and cannot be customized normally. Obviously the original JB700 can be customized. But the way they could have done it is they could have like moved the vehicle up on the website, which I believe they did with the Insurgent Pickup and Technical. They moved them like up more on the Warstock website. And then, which of course makes it easier to find those two vehicles. And obviously, I'm sure they could have put something on there that the vehicle can now be upgraded to the like weaponized version or something like that. So I wish it was an upgrade instead of having it be like a whole new like separate vehicle purchased. So I definitely feel it would have saved money. But yeah, next con I have is it's a completely separate variant, kind of already went in details of that one. Next con I have is a slightly worse left-hand than regular counterpart. Kind of already went in details of that with the like regular one even, I think. Next con I have is it's not raceable, because it's one of 4 non-raceable options in the Sports Classic class, as I've mentioned before. Next con I have is it's not a faithful recreation of the story mode counterpart. As I mentioned, it has no ejector seat, which sucks. Like, even without like a jump boost or something, could still be useful, because you could like use the ejector seat and potentially like prevent being killed by like an Oppressor Mark II or something like that, for example. But yeah, also doesn't have like the uniqueness of the guns that it does in the story mode, which also sucks. And then it doesn't have actual spikes, instead it has spike mines. So I feel they did a pretty terrible job, honestly, recreating the one from story mode. I wish they did a better job recreating that exact like variant. But yeah, next con I have is it still has bare bone customizations. If they want to make a whole like new separate like variant of it, they should have at least had more than just primary and secondary weapon customization, in my opinion, for sure. Next con I have for the JB700W is it's not as unique as its story mode counterpart. But to be completely honest, most of that stems from the fact that the story mode is nowhere near as many weaponized vehicles, obviously, as the online version of the game, obviously, which I completely understand in that regard. But as I mentioned, even without that, I like mentioned that the story mode one has like different guns, which are pretty neat guns actually. It kind of like burst like round effects, I feel. And then the one in story mode obviously has like the spikes, like the actual spikes, not the mines, like all the like arena war vehicles have. So they kind of just reused that asset from the arena war vehicles for the online version, which kind of sucked in my opinion. And like they completely removed the ejector seat, which I get in the story mode it only impacts the passenger, but it would have been cool to have an ejector seat that impacts like the driver for like, you know, tough situations. Like as I mentioned, if you get like locked onto and like a missile gets shot from like an Oppressor Mark II, you could probably like escape it almost the last moment, for example. But yeah, next con I have is it does not have an ejector seat, as I mentioned with like, one from story mode obviously has the ejector seat, this one does not. Kind of already went in all the details I can think of that one, I believe. Yeah, next con I have is it does not have actual spikes as an option. Kind of went in pretty big details of that one already as well. Next con I have is it no longer has unique machine guns. Pretty much went in all the details I could with that one, with previous ones as well. And the last con I have is spike mines have short range, no spike strips. As I mentioned with the previous one, which is only in the single player, of course. Big difference though. I think I kind of want to talk about like how they should handle the secondary weapons. But yeah, secondary weapons, as I kind of mentioned, instead of having just spike and slick mines, I feel they should have done like multiple different like varieties of spikes. I don't feel it even needed slick mines to be completely honest, because this vehicle is not even going to be very beneficial in PvP anyways, even with just the slick mines. Obviously it's nice it does have that, obviously, because it can give it more of a PvP use if someone's like cheating you in like a supercar or something like that, I guess. But yeah, I wish you had like the spikes of the JB700 commissioned, the like 3 different like small like spikes behind the vehicle. And obviously they can keep the spike and silk mines, of course, those are completely fine as well. But yeah, I would have especially loved to see the like spike strips that the police use. There's actually spike strips like police use in the game, of course, which I might include that like as a like picture at the end or somewhere randomly in this video, because I didn't originally include it, but I might. But yeah, they clearly already have like spike strips in the game, so it would have been nice to let it use those. There's even like a mission in like Grand Theft Auto San Andreas from back in like 2004 or whatever, I believe. There's like a vehicle with one of the like wing cart missions, I believe, where you get to use like spike strips to stop someone who won't like give up one of the vehicles and need it at like the wing car showroom or whatever in like San Fierro, something like that. So yeah, they've clearly had no problem when you use spike mines. Not spike mines, but spike strips on a vehicle before. So it would be really cool to have multiple different like spike options in addition to the spike mines and the slick mines. Wouldn't have hurt to have another like 2 more like secondary weapon options. But yeah, that's going to be it for this review. That's going to be it for this review and guide video, of course, for the JB700, JB700 commissioned, and JB700W. Hope you enjoyed.